It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday night, but in the early hours of September 10th, 2025, the steady hum of drones replaced the familiar sounds of silence across eastern Poland. This was a coordinated fleet of Russian-made drones flying deep into NATO territory, sparking the most serious international incident since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. For 7 tense hours, Polish Air Force operators watched as blips moved across their radar screens, penetrating further into their country than any previous incursion. Air traffic controllers scrambled to divert civilian flights while military commanders made split-second decisions. This was a deliberate, coordinated provocation that brought us closer to direct conflict than at any time since World War II. The drones weren't carrying explosives, but they were carrying something potentially more dangerous: the power to test NATO's resolve, to sow division among allies, and to challenge the very foundation of collective security that has protected Europe for generations. The first alerts came around 1 a.m. local time. Border radar stations detected multiple unmanned aerial vehicles crossing from Belarusian airspace into Poland. Within minutes, the Polish military implemented Protocol Wolfram, their emergency response to unauthorized aerial incursions. By 1:30 a.m., Polish F-16s were airborne, joined shortly by Dutch F-35s that were already in the region as part of NATO's air policing mission. An Italian early warning aircraft provided additional surveillance support. Over the next several hours, these aircraft would identify, track, and ultimately take down each of the drones. The pattern was unmistakable, a Polish Defense Ministry official later explained. This wasn't a stray drone losing its way. This was a coordinated swarm operating with purpose. One was tracked near Lublin, approximately 60 miles from the border. Another reached the outskirts of Radom, about 60 miles south of Warsaw. Most remarkably, debris from one drone was found near Olesno, an astonishing 250 miles inside Poland. Warsaw's Chopin Airport, the country's largest aviation hub, suspended operations. Even more significantly, authorities closed the airport at Rzeszów, a critical logistics hub for military aid flowing into Ukraine. Polish media began running live blogs with advice on emergency preparedness, including what to pack in an evacuation backpack. This is a new tactic that Russia is employing, most likely to halt shipment of supplies from Poland's Rzeszów airport to Ukraine. The flight pattern also suggests that they were mapping response times, identifying radar coverage gaps, and testing coordination between NATO allies. The choice of unarmed drones was strategically brilliant in its cynicism. By not carrying explosives, Russia maintained plausible deniability. They could claim, and did claim, that this was all a big misunderstanding, that the drones had simply strayed off course. While that can be ruled out as a mistake, the next encroachment was more than just a subtle jab to NATO. At 9:58 a.m. local time on September 19th, 3 Russian MiG-31 Foxhound fighter jets entered Estonian airspace near Vainloo Island in the Gulf of Finland and stayed for about 12 minutes. They flew without flight plans, had their transponders off, and were not communicating via two-way radio with Estonian air traffic control. In response, 2 Italian F-35A Lightning II jets stationed at Amari Air Base as part of NATO's Baltic air policing mission intercepted and escorted the MiG-31s toward Kaliningrad. A sign of weakness and failure to impose costs and consequences will confirm for Moscow that they can continue to escalate without fear of the outcome. Russia's choice of Poland for this provocation was anything but random. Several factors made Poland the ideal testing ground for NATO's resolve. First, Poland has become the main logistical hub for Western military aid to Ukraine. The airport in Rzeszów has been dubbed the Gateway to Ukraine, with thousands of tons of weapons, ammunition, and supplies passing through on their way to the front lines. Several of the Russian drones appeared to be flying toward this critical infrastructure. Second, Poland has been one of Ukraine's most steadfast supporters and one of Russia's most vocal critics. Testing Poland specifically sends a message to other hawkish Eastern European nations about the risks of confronting Russia. Third, the political timing was significant. Poland's newly elected nationalist president, Karol Nawrocki, had visited Trump at the White House just the previous week. The drone incursion tested this relationship directly. Would Trump stand with a leader he had recently hosted, or would he downplay the incident? Finally, Poland's geographic position made it operationally ideal for testing NATO's eastern flank defenses. Its long borders with both Ukraine and Belarus make it particularly vulnerable to exactly this kind of aerial provocation. While unprecedented in scale, the September 10th incident wasn't the first time Russian aircraft had violated NATO airspace. Several previous incidents set the stage for this escalation. In November 2022, a stray Ukrainian air defense missile struck the Polish village of Przewodów, killing 2 farmers. In 2023, a Russian drone exploded in eastern Poland, causing minimal damage but raising alarm bells about Moscow's willingness to test NATO boundaries. More recently, Estonia complained that a Russian Mi-8 attack helicopter had violated its airspace in the Baltic Sea for the 3rd time this year, part of a pattern of increased Russian aerial activity near NATO borders. What made the September 10th incident different was the scale, duration, and depth of penetration. The Gerbera drones used in the Polish incursion represent just one category of the unmanned threat. Russia has increasingly relied on drone warfare in Ukraine, using everything from cheap commercial drones modified for military use to sophisticated long-range systems. For NATO, the challenge is developing cost-effective countermeasures. Shooting down $20,000 drones with $500,000 missiles is economically unsustainable in the long run. Allies are increasingly investing in electronic warfare systems that can jam or hijack drones, as well as laser weapons that can disable them at lower cost. The incident also demonstrated the importance of integrated air defense. The coordination between Polish, Dutch, and Italian assets showed NATO's technical capability to respond, but also revealed gaps in coverage that Russia successfully exploited. For Poles living in the eastern regions, the drone incursion was more than a geopolitical event. It was a terrifying night that brought the war in Ukraine frighteningly close to home. Germany has already pledged to double its fighter jet contribution to NATO's air policing mission, and the UK is considering deploying Typhoon jets. Poland is accelerating its military modernization, including the acquisition of F-35 fighter jets from the US. Second, diplomatic isolation of Russia. European countries have already summoned Russian ambassadors to protest the incursion. The danger of these operations is that they could inadvertently trigger a larger conflict. A miscommunication, a technical malfunction, or an overly aggressive response could spiral into something more serious. Lastly, political resolution. Some analysts suggest Putin's ultimate goal may be to pressure Trump into pushing Ukraine toward a peace settlement on Russian terms. Putin's gambit achieved several objectives simultaneously. It gathered valuable intelligence on NATO defenses, sowed doubt and division among allies, reminded Eastern Europe of Russian reach, and did so while maintaining plausible deniability. The response revealed both strengths and weaknesses in the alliance. The military coordination between Poland, the Netherlands, and Italy was impressive. The political support from Germany and the UK was firm and immediate. But the ambiguity from the United States, the alliance's most powerful member, created dangerous uncertainty about NATO's ultimate reliability. For NATO, the drones over Poland serve as a wake-up call. The alliance must develop better responses to gray zone threats that fall below the threshold of armed attack, but still represent serious provocations. It must find ways to maintain unity despite differing political perspectives among member states. And it must reassure frontline states that the security guarantee remains ironclad, regardless of who occupies the White House.